Recently, Jack and I took on a really tough mountain bike loop in the Peak District called the Lord of the Loops. It was an epic day, or should that be days out, and you can find a link for it in the video description.
This video is all about the kit that we used for that monstrous ride, or it should be more specifically, our bikes. I was on a lovely Scottscale RC900, which was Joe's old long-termer, with a few choice upgrades, whereas you...
I was on a really nice Santa Cruz Highball CC, also with some very nice upgrades. They are both very fancy bikes, but we want you to tell us which you think is the best. After this video, there will be a community poll post going up on the BikeRadar YouTube page, and that's where you can vote.
And as always, whoever loses will be subject to some likely deeply unpleasant forfeit. So without further ado, we will make our cases about why we think our respective bikes are cooler than the others, and you can then vote on which is your favourite.
Obviously, we are going to start with the frame. My Santa Cruz Highball, I'm going to read my notes for the kind of key bits of geometry. A 69.5 degree head angle, a 73 degree seat angle, a 1140mm wheelbase, 426mm chainstays, and a 450mm reach. Whereas the Scottscale?
The Scottscale, a little bit more old school, but only very slightly, where we have a 69.5 degree head angle, a 73.6 degree seat angle, a 1127.9mm wheelbase, 425mm chainstays, and 443mm reach.
Two very similar frames in terms of their geometry, but we both rode the bikes. They do feel quite different though.
Yes, on paper they are quite similar, but there are a few subtle differences in the geometry, which adds up to a quite significantly different ride quality. So with my bike, the Scale, we have a slightly shorter wheelbase, a slightly steeper seat angle, and slightly shorter reach, whereas yours is a little bit more progressive and a more kind of fun ride quality overall.
Yet on the Santa Cruz, the geometry is ever so slightly more forgiving. That longer wheelbase means it's a bit more stable on the descents. However, I do like the Scott as well because the seat angle is slightly steeper, so you get a bit more over the pedals, don't you, for pedaling? You like that when you were climbing, didn't you?
Yeah, on those steeper, more techy climbs, that slightly more forward position just allows you to get a bit more power down, and that was shown through my sensational results, dropping you like a sack of tassies on any technical climb.
Definitely.
Definitely down to the bike.
So in terms of the frames, I'd be happy riding either. Any last words?
Yes. Now Scott, the Scale in particular, a bike that's been piloted to innumerable glories by Nino Schurter, obviously gains me some serious kudos and points, but as we have often joked on the channel, to Santa Cruz, they can do no wrong. If we include any video of a top 5 roundup of any mountain bikes and we don't include a Santa Cruz,
we get told off because it's the coolest bike brand.
Coolest bike brand on earth.
Now we're on to forks. Mine came with the top spec RockShox Sid Ultimate. That's got a carbon crown and a claim weight of 1,582 grams. So incredibly light, very fancy. Yours a bit cheaper with the RockShox Sid RL3, but you liked it?
Liked it a lot, still a really excellent fork, even after you've ragged it as your long-term bike for about a year. But yeah, most importantly on mine though, painted to match, whereas yours was subtly not quite matching with the blue, which I'm sure upset many of you.
Yeah, also I didn't fit a lockout to mine. You have Scott's twin lock system on yours. For some of the climbs we're doing throughout that ride, the twin lock really helps, doesn't it? I could fit a lockout to mine, but I just haven't got around to it.
The lockout is really good. To be honest, I'm not totally convinced on the twin lock system. I'd rather just have it locked and unlocked, that kind of like halfway house and never really used. But yeah, definitely for a longer day like that, with some paved sections, lockouts are great.
So in terms of forks, it's probably me for the win because, well, it is just a nicer fork, but it is more expensive.
It looks cool as well. That carbon crown is amazing in the flesh and it looks like it's almost been cast, but it is just carbon. It's a very, very cool piece of kit. Onto the Cockpit, very different in this case. I had Syncross, which is Scott's kind of in-house components brand, their Fraser integrated bar stem combo, which came in at 720mm wide. The ride quality of this is slightly different, and it's also got like a little bit more back sweep than a typical bar, so it feels a little bit weird at first, but even over the course of that longer day, I didn't find it to be overly stiff. It certainly didn't flex at all, and that little bit of back sweep maybe helped on the rougher descents. You went for a more conventional setup with some of Pro's kit, didn't you?
Yes, I had the Pro Tharsis XC stem in 80mm and the Carbon Tharsis XC bar in 720mm. Obviously a bit different to the one-piece combo, but again, I had no problems with it. Nice and stiff, nice and light, fairly happy. I have also ridden the Fraser ICS one-piece combo. I wasn't too sure about it. There's always the fact that if you want to kind of change either your stem length or your bar width, you're going to have to change both bits at the same time, but it's still a really cool bit of kit.
Yeah, it's a really cool just looking thing, but it also lends the bike quite a nice kind of complete system look. I personally liked it. Like Joe says, it does have its disadvantages. I'm going to say I win for looks alone.
Onto brakes, Jack had SRAM level TLM brakes. I had the top spec Shimano XTR brakes.
Pretty balanced, to be honest. It's a case of what system you like the feel of more. I think we both agree that SRAM maybe slightly edges out the Shimanos in terms of overall power, but really how important that is for that kind of day out doesn't matter quite so much. So should we call that one even?
Yeah, even-ish. One thing about the XTRs is that they're obviously a lot lighter than the SRAMs, but they do cost a lot more.
Onto the rest of our finishing kit, I just again had more of Syncross's kit. Now mine was a 31.6mm seat post. We didn't opt to run droppers on the day. It's amazing we survived really, Joe. But with the 31.6, we've got more options for droppers, whereas you with the 27.2, a little bit more limited.
Yes, I Pro Tharsis again with their 27.2 fixed carbon post. Slightly more limited if I wanted to run a dropper, but because it is 27.2, so a bit narrower, had plenty of flex in there, so it was nice and comfortable. It's also an inline post, so that helped with the slightly shallower 73-degree seat angle you get on the Highball. Jack, your post was set a little bit further back, but you do have the steeper seat angle.
Yeah, it's got that tiny bit of setback, but it also means that if I did want to go really far forward, like a track bike, then you could go for an inline post, and that'll give you a good fit if that's what works for you.
My saddle was the Pro Falcon saddle in the 132mm width and carbon rails. I wasn't too sure about it when it came out of the box. It came from Pro, but it was really comfortable when riding. I was able to kind of shift my weight forward on it when climbing. And yeah, for a kind of big day out like we had on the Lord of the Loops, it was great.
I have no real opinion on my saddle. It was perfectly comfortable, which is probably a good thing to have no opinion, given it was such a long day out. But yeah, again, nice comfortable saddle, good cutout. Who's gonna win?
I like the Pro stuff, looked really nice and very light.
Mine's painted to match though.
Onto grips.
I had a set of Ergon's GA2 grips. I was a little bit skeptical before we started the ride, not because of the grips themselves, but because, as I mentioned, this was Joe's old long-termer, and over the course of many thousands of miles, he'd worn them down to a stub. But even then, they still worked completely fine in the day, and I actually grew to quite like that very defined shape. They're not just a complete cylinder, they have a really defined ergonomic shape. And yeah, seemed really good to me.
I had ESI silicone grips. You see those a lot on XC bikes. Really light, obviously. It's a bit of a Marmite product. Some people don't like them. I really like them. They're a bit difficult to get on sometimes. You have to be really quick when you get them on or they kind of get stuck. But I've got the knack for it now. As Jack said, I've used those Ergon lock-on grips a lot. I've actually used them for 2 years, not one, so they've had a hard life. But that sort of kick they have near the tops just twists your hands a bit more and makes them nice and comfy. So in terms of who won, it's down to personal preference really. I go for the ESIs, whereas you?
I don't know. I like the Ergons. I'd want more time in them, but ESI are a known quantity. I have used them before. I might hand you this one, Joe. As our video was sponsored by Rotor, we were both using their 1x13 mountain bike group set. Where we did have a difference though was in our gearing choices.
Yeah, I had a bigger cassette. I had a 10 to 52 tooth cassette on the back, and then I had a slightly larger chainring, a 34 tooth chainring on the front, which I paired to Rotor's Inspider power meter and their Capic carbon crank. That is a really light mountain bike power meter setup. I think it comes in around 512 grams, which is amazing. And that cassette, I like to spin a bit more than Jack, so it gave me a good spread of gears, whereas you?
Yeah, I went for Rotor's aluminium 2 in power crank set. So I get double-sided power, which meant I put out double the power, of course, which was matched with 32-tooth chainring and a 10 to 46-tooth cassette on the back. Like Joe says, I'm a legend. I like to mash away at those harder gears, and it's just personal preference for me. I just like the feel of that overall. And the gears, as we mentioned in the original video, came into their own at certain points in the day.
Yeah, so I think that one, it just comes down to personal preference. If you're a bit of a masher, go with Jack. If you're a bit of a spinner like me, go with me. Wheels were once again the same. They're from Edco, and I'm very sorry because I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong. They're Pasubio wheels.
No way. They are very fashionable, 30mm wide internal, hookless rims, and they plumped up are again matching
Wolfpack tyres to a nice kind of
chunky, roundish, but not too round, squared off profile. Really, good modern wheel set. And on those tyres, truth be told, before the ride we were a little bit skeptical, just because we'd never used them before. They're quite a small brand, they supply a couple pro teams, but other than that, we'd never really used them before.
But yeah, we really like them. They did 10 hours of hard riding in the peaks, basically going over sharp rocks for nearly all of it. No punches. They've got a kind of old school Schwalbe Racing Ralph profile. We've both used that tyre, we both really like it. So yeah, we were really impressed with those.
They're also only about €40 each, direct from Wolfpack, and they've got a pretty sticky compound. They didn't wear out too much in the ride. So yeah, overall, a very pleasant surprise.
And finally, they are also pretty light. I'm once again going to need my notes. The front race TLR we rode in 2.25, that was 640 grams, and the rear cross TLR in 2.25 again was 670 grams. For a tyre with pretty decent sidewall protection, that's pretty good.
Pretty damn good.
The last thing we have to talk about before you cast your votes is price. Now obviously my Santa Cruz was a fully aftermarket build, so it wasn't going to come cheap, whereas your Scott a little bit more stock.
Yeah, apart from the group set, which we put on for that video, is pretty much as stock as it would come from the factory. But it's safe to say both of them would cost lots. We're very lucky boys.
And you can let us know what you think of bike prices as a whole in the comments.
I'm sure they'll be very positive on the whole.
So there you have the rundown of our bikes. They both look pretty similar, but having both ridden both, we can assure you they felt very different.
But at the end of the day, it is not what we think. It is up to you, our beloved audience, to decide who has the coolest of the two bikes. My handsome black and green Scott, matchy to the nines, or Joe's beautiful blue Santa Cruz. Cast your votes in the community poll. That is already up on the channel now, and we'll think of some horrible forfeit for one another to do.
And as always, if you want to see more content like this, more of Jack's denim shirt, more of my net beard and terrible haircut, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that little bell button so that
every time we upload a video like this, you will get a notification. Wow!